But it's useless. Even if it burns down, the wreckage and ash are still there. Taku, he really swung the bat.
Humans are endlessly unique and varied creatures. What fills one of us with joy leads another to despair, where one finds pleasure, another finds pain, and a series loved by some is hated by others. This unique nature provided by the randomness of the universe and our collisions with other beings in it creates a disconnect between us all. We can never truly feel the same as another or desire the exact same future or express our feelings in the same words. But there are some things we can at least share close variations of, the kind of moments we've collectively learned to call memorable, or sometimes a collection of them, like growing up is. Considering an ordinary life, there's no one who fully avoids becoming an adult, whether they rush to it or away from it. It's no secret that Fully Cooley is an anime dealing with the march to adulthood, from the small marks of affection all the way up to the invisible scars of being left behind. Sometimes we go against this march, we reject the future, cling to the past, and refuse to grow up. Well, I think the entire anime is fantastic, and I'm dying to write about Haruko as the reality of a manic pixie dream girl. First, I wanted to tackle the character who, for me, had the show stolen from her by everyone's favorite pink-haired psychopath. Mamimi, to me, is the rejection of adulthood the rest of the cast is importantly contrasted against. The anime opens with this contrast. Naoto is quietly doing his homework, and Mamimi is goofing off with his bat. Man, it's really impossible to avoid innuendos when the whole series is just one big one, huh? Before interrupting him for some intimacy, she pushes the work from his hands and falls on top of him. He complains but doesn't resist. As they lie there, the difference in their age is apparent in height, stressed again and again throughout the anime. There they lie, a young boy trapped under the weight of her past. She's clinging onto him because he's the most present reminder of his brother Tasuku, who left the country, the one she was in love with. Naoto is a vent for her frustrations about his departure for sure. But I say it's also a rejection of adulthood in general because this arrangement means we never see her in an appropriate space. She's always with the much younger lead, or waiting outside of his school, or at the one where his older brother saved her. She's physically shown in these spaces that are Naoto's present, but her past, and where he is attempting to leave them to be more adult, saying he's too busy with work or taking care of others and drinking black coffee, even trying to take her on a real date later. She is the opposite. She believes in gods from video games, nicknames everything in her life with the same name, and hangs around in cat ears where Naoto despises them, and so on. They're each more interested in the things the other's respective age group traditionally would be. She doesn't want to grow up. Growing up means the world we know ending to make room for a new one. It means leaving behind all the things that remind her of better times, the times when Tasuku was around. And it's not like he'd ever come back, and I do think there's some recognition of this in her. If she really thought he would, why would she do any of this with his brother specifically after all, and not someone else? Naoto is a placeholder, but one which will never see its place retaken. So she has to cling to the embers of her childhood where Tasuku did exist in her world. And there's another wrinkle to rejecting the process of entering adulthood. It's when your world gets wider, your aspirations mature and differ in new spaces, and where not just things get left behind, but people do too. Growing up is what took Tasuku away from Mamimi. She has an ill will against the act itself, so it makes sense that she would try her hardest not to allow its grip to be present over her as well. As a truant and probable arsonist, it's just another form of her rebellion against the world she was dropped in that's been unfair to her. Now, the way Mamimi met Naoto's brother was him saving her from the school that was burning down, and this was the only real bright spot of her world after a moment of sheer darkness, or at least it's what led to what was that bright spark. Outside of that, she'd never known relief from the pressures of a harsh world, financial troubles, bullying at school, and everything that comes with those kinds of issues. We never see her parents or her home, and as far as we know, she's alone. The reality of her world makes the fictional one of her video game, Firestarter, seem almost real. Described as having no end, an eternal stasis where you prevent one society from ruling the world, seeking the approval of a god who put you there. As far as she's ever known, that's almost like her life. Her actions are powerless to better the world around her, and even if she burns it all down, the ashes still remain, as she says. It all comes back, it keeps going, and nothing changes. Even if the physicality is removed, the torture it represents remains. The only relief is one of a savior, how Tasuku saved her or how she believed Canti would come down and do the same now. The deepest wish at her core is for something or someone to bring an end to the awful world around her in whatever way that is, either saving her and taking her from it or burning it all down. You can easily reason such a god exists when it's what you see as the only way out of the mess around you, not to mention it fits with being less mature in her case. The fake wings and halo on Canti is enough proof as it would be for a child watching a play. She asks for,
Lord Canti, bless me with your kiss, your absolution.
She wants something with the power to make a change to do so. If she is the arsonist, which is likely, it makes sense. She was calling upon a higher being, something more powerful, offering the same sacrifice which brought the spark of change into her life all those years ago, Tasuku. And it almost works again. When Naoto's consumed by Canti and saves Mamimi, it's in the same place where his brother did so before. It's so similar he even holds her head to comfort her in the same way his sibling did. For a moment, Naoto is in control of the situation, inside the body of her supposed savior, saving her. There's no more fire set after this because change had finally been summoned in some way. The ashes which represented both part of her troubled past and the moment which helped change it were scattered, removed from the site which was the turning point of her life. Maybe the past altogether would be removed and the future would finally reveal itself. Her and Naoto have an understanding look as if so, where he internally vows to stay by her side forever. But things don't remain this way because eventually he swings the bat. After Naoto saves the town with Haruko's help a couple episodes later, doing what no one thought he would by swinging the bat, Mamimi is disappointed. And after all, why wouldn't she be? As she said earlier,
But he's not the type to actually swing the bat, you know.
She never actually wanted him to do so. I think there's a few reasons for this. First is in how she views the satellite coming down, seeing it as some kind of god of death bringing the end of the world. As we said, what would it matter if the world really ended? Hers basically already did, and growing up would do nothing but solidify that fact. She doesn't have any friends or any place to be or anything to her name. She's just drifting, giving the same nickname to everything even vaguely important in her life in an attempt to not forget the guy who grew up and left her behind. Pawing at his younger brother helped for a bit, and he even showed some promise in her life, but the vow of an instant means nothing when compared to a month or a week, a day, or even an hour. Just because Naoto thought he'd stay by her side forever doesn't mean it would actually happen. After her more dedicated episode 2, she plays a minor role in 3 and 4, appearing only for a few non-impactful moments, because the main character is off doing different things, leaving her alone. As Naoto is trying to grow up for Haruko, he simulates one of the great pains of growing up that Mamimi knew all too well from his brother, leaving things behind, even ones you swore your life to. He becomes focused on a new desire, one which takes him to different places. They start to slowly drift apart, not met with a goodbye, but instead the lack of one, left to wonder. Even her outlet, the vague reminder of past love, is now trying to grow up and leave her in the dust. You can't go back to what was lost once it grows up. So whether the world ends or doesn't, the end result is the same, so it almost makes sense to just take the more immediate option. One which means she never has to acknowledge the pain which waits in her future where her denial could remain eternal. She's disappointed when he swings the bat because it brings the longer form of pain and at the same time acts as a reminder of that pain. Naoto was a reminder of his brother, but he lacked one thing about him: why he left. He's awful at baseball, never even trying to swing the bat, down to his own fears of his brother's legacy. When he does, when he shows he can, it's a reminder of the kind of growth which led Tasuku away from her. If he never swung the bat, he wouldn't have ever left. But he was someone who swung. And now even his brother is too. A new pain and a reminder of old pain all at once. Mamimi starts to sour on Naoto after this expression of disappointment. This isn't even someone she wants to be with, but just her outlet to avoid the overflow of adulthood, and even something that meaningless is leaving her behind for another woman. She asks him directly,
When did you start to change and grow up and everything, Taku?
with a displeased expression. At the end of the day, Mamimi was manipulating Naoto. She never wanted him to grow up or express independence or really change at all. Her refusing to grow up is a form of stopping the world, keeping things as static as possible, even as she wished for change. She's stuck between these ends, a past with joy, an awful present, and a future that would kill both at once. A wish for change and a boy who brings the wrong kind of change. While the initial sparks of a new savior looked promising, the flame that followed only proved such change would leave her in dust. It's like a wake-up call that she can't even keep a kid under her thumb as a messed up emotional outlet. Someone else came along and offered him something different, something he sees as greater, something more adult, and he's gone, even if that same person was also hurting him. Is she really that worthless? Adulthood beats her out again, and it only gets worse when she rejects Naoto. When he tries to salvage their false relationship with a sudden date, she essentially reveals why he was kept around, refusing to go along with his mature advancement of things. I think this is stressed when he then proceeds to save her after she calls for his brother to do so instead. It's the final nail in the coffin, making the truth blunt for our main character. So basically, he says, screw you. Yes, I am an adult who will save you, unlike my brother who left you. I'm right here, I'm going to do it. And he does, he proves it. Then he cuts her out, a confirmation on her end. He's changed, grown out of what she could offer him, left behind by adulthood once more. Her and her denial can't catch a break. Even when she's under an umbrella, she still gets wet. Everyone around her is more special or better off or treating her like crap. If even her love's younger brother is rejecting her, then what is there? Here, she sours on everything again, even the hope she once held out. Looking at her phone with Tasuku's number, she lets the terminal core eat it, giving an essential whatever to the world. Everything is falling down around her, so why care? Now is the time to live without a care, seeking petty, random revenge because why not? There's nothing else to do, no other outlet except this random, sentient bit of technology. And that itself is her falling another step further from a child she couldn't control to a cat that found its own love, eventually landing on a robot. Surely it wouldn't leave her, it couldn't get out of control and ruin things too, right? But it does. Her petty revenge leads to the climax of the anime as the terminal core grows from consumption, eating Canti and fusing with the giant hand. For once, it wasn't something coming out of Naoto's head and causing problems for everyone else, it was something from Mamimi's. All the negative feelings controlled by an outlet were let loose, overflowing and helping to almost tear the world apart. And once again, there's Naoto to save the day, this time definitively dispelling the demons from someone else's mind, controlling a power greater than anyone could know. And what we witness after the battle puts an exclamation point on that statement. What Mamimi sees is this child she once manipulated standing tall, well above her, back facing her, proudly holding a reminder of the past that shaped him but not letting it weigh him down. The base that's too big, but he grasps it and looks forward anyway, firmly looking to the future. This is the picture she takes just after giving it an acknowledging glance. It's her first real good picture. All the others she took were rather childish, amateur, and out of focus, and really proving nothing more than the fact that she was present with Naoto and how gleeful and happy she looked without really being so. They were kind of fake, like an attempt to recap something that existed in her past, which is really her whole character. But this one, it's something different. It's much more considered, framed in a different way, with careful intent, with a true subject matter, real feelings to be captured. It's good enough to be published, even. This photograph is her finally growing up, taking a good picture of Naoto, who represents everything she was refusing to be, is recognizing that fact and finally acting on it. It's not a single moment per se, but rather the sum of those which came before it, a whole album of photos, the learning necessary to make something positive from a sea of negative experience. But I think it's one that captures the highlights of the journey. She grows up, leaving behind the world which she knew, good and bad alike. The mark of this is true when she says her simple goodbye of,
"So long, Naoto." That's what Mamimi said when she left school.
She stops calling him Taku, an act of moving on both from her outlet and the reason she felt the need for one to begin with. And the subtle finality of her leaving, the kind which leaves an idea but never a certain confirmation, is one of the things I love most in any story. In my experience, it's one of the most true aspects of growing up. Our lives' events, especially those between individuals, don't usually come out with grand finales or dramatic climaxes. They just kind of stop and putter out eventually, leaving the same kind of feeling Mamimi was left with when Tasuku left, and the same one she leaves Naoto with when she leaves. Sometimes our reminder won't be an object, it won't be a base, but rather a feeling, something that comes back with certain sights or specific smells. What I can say to sum up Mamimi's character and all of this at once is that growing up sucks. The pressures that our world places on us as we age aren't fair or equal or even natural in many cases as we've been led to believe. We're once again dropped into a new world where we never asked to be, only this time without any of the safety typically afforded by adolescence. It's terrifying, but it's a forced change from outside, the acts of a higher power, whether that's determined by the universe or society. It's what Mamimi was wishing for, but refused to accept because it would kill the past, because of how it made Tasuku her past in the first place. But in the end, I think she sees the positives that he gained from it, the reasons why he would leave her behind in the first place. That change brings with it new restrictions, but also freedoms. The world you knew ended. There is no school and classmates, there's no home with a forceful bind on you, there's no need for you to stay where you are. These things aren't inherently good, but they can be. For Tasuku, they helped him achieve his dream. For Mamimi, they end the harshness she knew, opening the world to a door which has those same things, but not as a guarantee where they were here. Growing up has or will affect us all eventually, and it has or will suck in the future just as it has in the past. So the most we can do until we create a more fair system is to take what good it can bring along with the bad, so we get something from it at least. Fully Cooley is quite a unique experience, taking some of the most immature moments and jokes and weaving them into a story that captures the mature essence of growing up. The really mature, not mature? The mature essence of growing up. Hopefully we can cover more of that in the future. As I said, I really want to tackle Haruko and the myth of the manic pixie dream girl. And the best way to make that happen is a like or a comment on this video so that it can do well and I can justify more attention to the series, but also because I want to know if you liked it, what I had to say, and your thoughts on it as well. Anyway, links in the pinned comment, most importantly my Patreon, where these lovely folks above me support the channel right now. But to everyone alike, thank you for watching, and I hope that I'll see you again soon.